Hello there, so I'm going to recap to start with. So Joyce is in orthopaedic ward and she's broken hip for the second time, and there were a total of 8 falls between the first hip fracture and going for the x-ray after the second, and she's being given exactly the same medications as she was receiving in the home, which is the paracetamol, the codeine when required, and the sertraline, which is I'm finding this really difficult to do, so I will look it up yourself what sertraline is for, and diazepam, which is to improve her, to basically reduce the state of tension that she's in, so that she's able to experience some enjoyment of life and not be in a state of constant extreme tension. So the home 2 days ago informed the hospital that they would not be taking her back because they accept that what with 8 falls between the first and the second hip fracture, it's pretty obvious that they actually can't cope with looking after her and keep her safe. They just can't do it. And that is despite, I only found this out last night, that is despite checking her every half hour. So I do want to make this very clear that the home have been doing absolutely everything they could within the means that they have, and to check someone every half hour, that's an incredible amount of work. Obviously it's just not been enough, because as well as suffering from Alzheimer's, she is the person that she is, and she's an intensely restless individual that finds it very hard to keep still at the best of times, and these are the worst of times, so that's obviously so much worse. So that's a basic recap. Whatever I've left out, I apologise. So I've been tasked myself really with the job of trying to sort something out, knowing she can't go back to the home, knowing that the consequences of looking after her one-to-one on a full-time basis is actually unsustainable. That seems to be everyone's opinion. Although if you were to go into different cultures with more support, it'd be different, of course, but in our fragmented family culture that we have in the UK, that's a reality. So this has been my issue. Right, let's find somewhere else for my mum to live that can give her one-to-one support, and got some good advice last night about what to do on the phone, but today it's all been out putting it into effect, and I do apologise. I'm finding it very difficult to make this film, obviously. So what we've got dwindling resources, a requirement for one-to-one care, a suggestion to involve the social worker, social services, and to create a best interest meeting. So that's really what I was set up with. Now, I had 2 ways to begin all this really, and one is to go to the ward, phone the ward and set things in motion there, and the other is to go to the disability team. And I couldn't get a reply from the ward, so I decided to give it a go with the disability team. It's incredible just how difficult everything is. I want to make that crystal clear to you so you understand just how difficult it is, because who knows when someone else might be in this situation. So that's what I'm doing this for, as always, as you know. That's why you're watching. So when I contacted the disability team, first of all, it's contacting the hospital information, and it's all computerized with an artificial intelligence which asks you questions, and it's not very helpful. And finally I was given a number of completely the wrong department, and when the woman answered the phone, she said, "Oh, they always do this, they always give us the people that we're not supposed to get." So she then gave me the correct number and spoke to the person who answered the phone a little bit about the situation. Mother 90, can't go back to care home, looking for something else, need help with all that. And then I was passed to one of the members of staff who knows the score there, and I got so much useful information. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk you through what I now understand the process to be. So if a person in a situation, so they're aged 90, they can't go back into the care home they were in, cognitive decline in terms of Alzheimer's in our case, could be dementia, whatever. So what do? Well, this is what happens. The first thing to do is to contact the ward, which is what I tried to do but couldn't get through. And then the ward will make a referral to something called the SPOA. And the SPOA is a single point of access. So the single point of access then will set things in motion. And indeed, I must have had a call from them a day or so ago, but they didn't say who they were. But even if they had, I wouldn't have known, because at that point I didn't know the system like I know from this morning. So they contacted me most likely and said, what's the situation? I would give them a brief outline. So the next step is it then goes to a nurse team to do an assessment of the situation, and then that information gets passed through to the discharge team. Then someone from the discharge team carries out an assessment. I'm deadly serious with all this, just so you understand. And at any point I may be contacted by phone, and the assessment team from the discharge team will carry out, they will meet my mother and find out what they think from her. And one of the things they're going to be doing is they're going to be looking to see if what we have here is social care needs or nursing needs. Now, it's not completely obvious to me. I certainly didn't understand that at this point, and in fact it was expressed to me it could go either way. Now, if she's got nursing needs, what then happens is she's eligible for NHS funding, and then that puts us into a completely different ballgame. If there is no nursing need and it's a social care need, then she would not be eligible for NHS funding. And when I spoke about the best interest meeting, the suggestions I received, it would be better to organise a more informal meeting. And at first, what was suggested to me, because I've got power of attorney for financial and for medical, then what they would do is they just meet with me. And this is one of the moments in life where you have choices. So I decided to make the following choice. I'd sussed this person out. My intuition felt that this person has been quite helpful, and also a certain degree of empathy, definitely. So I thought, let's just lay it on the line. So here I am. I've been doing what I've been doing. It's been about a year now. I've moved down here since the end of January, and I used to have ME a long time ago, and effectively haven't had it for so long, but I'm experiencing ME attacks, as I like to call them, because that's what they are. And as well as that, I've also got post-traumatic stress disorder, which has been under the surface for a very long time. It's been coming out a lot this year, and indeed I have been through 2 assessments, and I'm due for another assessment on the 10th of September when I will be assessed for high intensity therapy to help me with the PTSD side of things. And it felt like it was appropriate to let her know that, so that she understood a little bit more of the bigger picture. And I also did mention that all the family are going through their own stuff, which is challenging. And let's face it, everyone's life's challenging at the moment, isn't it? Of course it is. Well, if not, then lucky for you, kudos to you, but for many of us, that's how it is. So, having learned all that, I then realised, oh no, there's yet more, isn't there? That's right. So, one of the things that have been suggested to me, because she's in an orthopaedic ward, which is an expensive place to be, what might be done is she might be moved to a small community hospital, possibly nearby. And that sounded like quite a good idea, to take the pressure off a little bit. However, what I was told this morning from that phone call is that if they were to do that, it would be for 2 weeks maximum, and it's unlikely, because generally speaking, that kind of a referral is more for people who have got some possibility of getting better from going into community hospital. So looked unlikely at this stage. So there were some other things, right? There was a spot purchase placement, wonderful terminology. Didn't understand what that meant, but basically there's a possibility she could be put into a temporary care home if that would be advisable or preferable. And there was also talk of an EMI nursing home, which is also a private nursing home. So these are all things we talked about. Right. So then I had the next phone call, which is I went to the ward and got the ward clerk and then got the staff nurse, and very fortunate again because an extremely helpful person too. And what she pointed out is that, first of all, let's just look at the nursing needs option. She was able to destroy that one straight away because she said what we mean by nursing needs is if she has to have dressing changed, catheters removed, given intravenous drugs, that's nursing needs. What my mother has are not nursing needs, these are care needs. So we can definitely forget about any NHS funding, if you forget about any of that. So she's definitely going to be regarded to be social care needs. And when it comes to the small community hospital, that's also a real no. That's just not going to happen. And I'm actually suffering from the effects of everything I've been doing today, and I actually can't find the point in the notes that I'd like to be able to refer to on that one. So I'm just going to have to leave that one out for the moment. And then I'm throwing this one in because it's a generally useful, interesting point, which is what they have in nursing homes and hospitals is they have these special tables which can go, it's got wheels on the bottom and a sidearm and it goes across the bed so the person can have their food when they're eating, right? Well, there's one of these in the home and one of these in the hospital, but they're very differently designed. So the one in the home is quite a flimsy thing. The one in the hospital is really strong and sturdy. So what I notice whenever I visit my mother at the hospital, if she's either in the bed or she's in the chair with this special table in front of her, which is so heavy she can't move it and she can't get out. Now what's so interesting is that from the point of view of the nursing home attitude, that's called restraint, and that's definitely not something that is allowable or accessible these days. So it's interesting how in one situation that you can't do that, another situation where you can do that. But here's the thing, I do apologise, I can't find exactly the right bit on my notes, but when I run this past a staff nurse today, it might be the staff nurse, it might be in the discharge team, that shows where I'm at, not sure which, but one of them said, oh, well actually, it's interesting you should say that, but actually nursing homes can do that, but they have to apply for a special thing which has got a fancy name, and I'm sorry, I just don't remember it. And this is, I think this is the point I want to bring you to this, which is that I am now in the process of a massively Byzantine, labyrinthine process, which is so complicated that when it is actually being explained and I'm taking detailed notes, I'm realising I'm finding this quite hard to follow. And I did feel like saying to you maybe a third of the way and halfway through this film, are you still with me? Are you following? Because it is a bit that way, isn't it? It's not easy to take on. And the thing is, the people who are administrating these systems completely freely admit how very difficult it is for people to understand. So it honestly isn't just me, just a relief for me at least. So really what I'm saying is that whenever I contact anyone, I will end up with the best advice I got from the people, and they will give me their opinions, and they're not always the same. Of course they wouldn't be, would they? The more complicated the system, the less likely people are going to be coming up with congruent, coherent views to these matters. So that leaves us, I'm going to try to understand what I've got written down here now. So the community hospital, clear rehab goals are required, 2 to 6 weeks of stay, only if they can guarantee there's a chance of improvement. As my mother's 90 and is effectively dying, that's not really likely to happen, so we can forget all that one. So everything very important here, but I will have to laugh because the figure I was given about how long it would take to find another home for my mother is between 3 days and 2 weeks, and it's a quick process. Well, actually, I also found out when I spoke to the staff nurse today, I actually found out that SPOA, that is the single point of access team, which is the beginning referral after the ward, so the ward refers it to SPOA. SPOA actually got the information from the home that they would not take my mother. So therefore, the 4th of September, that's 2 days ago. So 2 days ago they started. So that is now in operation, and I need to be aware that I will be contacted. And the other strong piece of advice I got is that what I need to do is to do something called contacting the Citizens Advice Bureau. And in the UK, it's a wonderful service because it's independent of government and institutions. A lot of people don't realise this. They're all volunteers, so they're absolute heroes, every one of them, to do that work. So my next step is going to be to get an interview with the Citizens Advice Bureau for Monday, so I can literally take all these sheets of paper and go through the whole thing and get their take on how things are going, to make sure that I am doing the right thing, and if there is something I haven't done, to do it, and if there's something I've done wrong, to get it corrected. So I think that just about brings me up to the speed with all this, and yeah, towards the end of the call with the staff nurse, I was absolutely shattered and hardly surprising, because it's all a lot to deal with. And of course, whilst I'm dealing with all this, it's so easy for everyone to forget this. I'm experiencing a huge raft of feelings, because it is who we're talking about, my mother, and she's going through this process. So thank you very much.